We made it to the end, y'all. How are we feeling? How are we holding up it at Rivalry Nation? It's been 6 episodes, 5 weeks of following these hockey players, watching them screw each other's brains out and fall in love in the process. And it's over. Season one, at least. And based off of Jacob Tierney's interview, we have till 2027 before we get season two. A bit of a distance, I know, but I don't think I can trust anyone else to make an incredible adaptation of The Long Game, which is Shane and Ilya's second book, and my second favorite book in the series, only a little behind Role Model, because Troy Barrett is just as big a hero to me as Scott is. But as I was saying, we made it to the end. And whilst I bawled my eyes out through most of episode six, I mean, she would have loved you like I love you. Always hits me in the gut every damn time. I cried when I first read it in the books, and I cried with every rewatch of episode six, and there has been a lot of it so far. That line is incredible. But the scene that made me into a bumbling, hyperventilating mess was Shane's conversation with Yuna after she got the old truth, because it speaks to such a universal and yet uniquely queer experience that it sent me back in time. And I had to talk about it ends this video, because in as much as Yuna got so much right in that scene, there's something that she got just a tad bit wrong. Now, I almost didn't make this video because, like I said in all the videos I released last week, I'm meant to be on a 2 weeks break to rest and enjoy the holidays. Now, I did mention that I was most likely going to come back today and make a vid, because I just had the suspicion that Jacob was going to do something with the finale that would have me filming a video immediately, almost immediately afterwards as a result. But it was just a hunch. I was quite prepared to not make today's video, apologize for disappointing you, and just continue to enjoy my break until episode 6 dropped. And Jacob wrote in the interaction between Shane and Yuna that wasn't in the book, but which broke me regardless. So here I am, making a video after all. But before I get into all of that, a quick thank you to my lovely patrons and YouTube members whose support have been instrumental in helping me continue to make content, especially since I started doing this full time at the start of the year, which was the last time I was in paid employment. And a special shout out to Lena and Holly for their extra support. You get all the hearts and kisses too. Mwah. If you too would like to support me on Patreon or become a YouTube member to enjoy certain perks, even get a shout out, the link to do so is in the description bar. And with that said, Shane and Yuna. You know, one thing about the fandom before we got the adaptation and a larger influx of fans made their way in thanks to the utter brilliance that is the show is the fact that we all collectively agree that Ilya Rozanov is a mama's boy. And I'm sure show fans would be on board that ship as well, even though the limitations of TV as a medium is that you don't get as much of an access to the character's inner thoughts and monologue like we get to read in the books. But Connor did such a great job that we can all agree that Ilya Rozanov loved his mother so incredibly much, and she, the phantom of her at least, guides him. What I don't see a lot of people admitting is the fact that to some degree, Shane Hollander is also a mama's boy. He just reads a little different because one, Yuna is still very much alive, and two, Yuna is his momager. Gods, I hate that word. Only because Chris Jenner flogged it to death, of course. Ugh. But as I was saying, due to Yuna being such a key influence in managing Shane and his career, it's often a bit difficult for some fans to see that Shane is also a mama's boy, but he is. His push and desire for approval as a character, we can definitely see, stems for his desire for his mother's approval. And no, this is not me saying that Yuna was abusive or held her expectations over his head like a whip, demanding that he only offer her perfection. That isn't the case. Shane, as a person, is someone who is driven to be the best. It's just that his desire and needs perfectly coincide with what his mother wants, and that has been his life for so long. Until he started fucking Ilya Rozanov and one, realized that he is gay, and two, that he is in love with his biggest rival. And that is where everything becomes so complicated for him. Now, I can spend a whole other video right? Talking about the intricacies of Yuna and Shane's relationship and how it is very much possible for a parent to love a child, but also unwittingly put so much pressure and burden on them that it shapes who that child becomes. But that is not what today's video is meant to be about. Nope. I would like us to focus instead on Shane and Yuna's interaction after David visits the cottage to get some dishwasher pods. Sorry. In the show, he came for his charger. I'm sorry, it's going to be a mess for my brain to try and keep the book and show changes separate because except for little tweaks here and there, they are so identical. And my AUDHD brain is having a not so swell time trying not to crumble into itself as I try to keep them separate. I have read this book so many times and watched the show so many times. It's a mind fuck. But as I was saying, I would like to focus instead on Shane and Yuna's interaction after David visits the cottage to pick up his phone charger because I think that that interaction speaks so well to the queer experience, particularly for queer people of color. Because when you grow up within a culture that has it ingrained in you that parents are always right and recoils at the thought of parents apologizing to their children for wrongs they might have committed, then watching Yuna Hollander tell her son she's sorry and asking him to please forgive her is something that would always get you in the gut, gets me in the gut. Of course, I'm not saying that white queer folks wouldn't also relate to that scene. I'm just saying that it hits particularly harder for those of us who grew up in a culture where that is wholly unexpected. And yet, whilst watching Yuna apologize to her son and tell him that she's sorry that she ever made him feel like he couldn't tell her the truth, I just had that voice in my head going, but Yuna, that is not the only reason why he's breaking down and telling you that he's sorry. I've seen so many people talking about the scene and breaking down in tears as a reaction to Yuna's words that a lot of them seem to be skipping Shane's part of the dialogue and what he is actually saying and what he's equally apologizing for, which Yuna isn't picking up as much in that scene either. It tells her that he really, really tried. And we know he did. I mentioned this in my Rose Landry video and the fact that her inclusion in the story is meant to be a nod to compulsory heterosexuality and the role it plays within a cis heteronormative patriarchal society like ours. So, like Shane tells Yuna, he really did try. His apology to her is one, he's sorry that he didn't come out outright and tell her, but he's also sorry because he fucking tried to be what society wanted of him and what was culturally expected of him. And he couldn't do it because it's not true to who he is. And he's sorry that he failed at that. Yuna's response only focused on the first part and not necessarily the second. Because, and here is something I've come to realize about a lot of heterosexual people, especially when they happen to be our parents, they don't really get all of it because their focus is on wishing that they were and had been a safe space for us to be able to come out to them. And they don't also understand that we are also battling with the guilt of everything that we were raised and taught to be and want and expect, and how we are terrified that we are disappointing them by not being that way, by not turning out that way. This is especially the case for queer people of color. Our cultures, our families, our histories are ones where everybody has been trained to be a certain way. There is the expectation of who you are meant to be, the line you are meant to toe. And that line is often very straight, very heterosexual. You go to school, you excel at it, you graduate, you get a good job, you settle down with a husband or wife, you have kids, you continue the family line. To step out of line in that regard feels like a betrayal to everything you were raised to be. That is the other part of the guilt that weighs on you when you want to tell your loved ones the truth of who you are. It's not just that I'm gay or a lesbian or bi or pan or ace or trans or queer in some way. It's, I'm sorry, I'm failing you, and all the expectations that come with that. I want to be me. And to be me is to be nothing like what you've invested in the thoughts of what my future would look like for me. It would be very different from what you've always envisioned of me. And I am sorry about that. That is what Shane is saying in that moment. That is what he's apologizing for. A lot of queer people of color know that when you come out to your parents, it's bigger than just you and them because it then trickles down to the larger family and community. We are so much more intertwined culturally because of who we are. I have a gazillion uncles and aunties and cousins by virtue of the fact that I am African, I am Nigerian. It's the same with my friends who are from the Caribbean, from South America, a childhood friend who is Sri Lankan. It is our experience that to take that step means not just the potential of disappointing your family, it's disappointing your family, not just nuclear, but the extended ones as well. And so when you tell your parents and apologize, you know that it's not just to them, it's to everyone that they have to relate to as well, who will eventually have to get the news and they would have to navigate that. It is what I find a bit unrealistic with regards to the book and the show, actually, to be honest, because it's so self contained with regards Shane and his family, particularly his maternal family, because there is absolutely no way that it's only Yuna. Like, even if she's an only child, you're trying to tell me that Shane doesn't have a bajillion cousins, second cousins, extended relatives, family. Like, I know this is for the sake of the story being contained, but it's quite interesting. But yeah, that is what hit me in that scene between Shane and Yuna because I have been there. I came out to my mother when I was 26, just a couple of months before my 27th birthday. No, my mother didn't walk in on me with a girl and thus found out what I'd been keeping away from her for so long. No, she found out a bit differently by waking up in the middle of the night through some motherly sixth sense to me crying directly over her as I just, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't take one more question about when I'm going to marry, when I'm going to bring a man home, when I'm going to settle down, when I'm going to give her children. It was a conversation that was long overdue. And like Yuna, my mother was kind and loving and just so apologetic about how sorry she is that I'd held this for so long because she could sense I was unhappy and didn't know why. And while she was apologizing and telling me that she loves me, and I was grateful for that, whilst at the same time upset with myself for the gratitude, for her gratitude, because damn it, she is my mother. And with dad having passed away when I was 22 and had been the one taking care of everything since then, she was all I had, and vice versa. Of course, she's meant to love me unconditionally. She's my mother. And before you say it, yes, I know I am lucky and I am blessed because my very African, very Nigerian mother was accepting of her child, our only child. And not a lot of queer folks get to have that. I am aware that I am very lucky, but at the same time, I was furious because why should a parent's love be conditional in the first place? Why the fuck? Do we live in a society where we have to be terrified of living our truth and coming out to those who are meant to love us unconditionally because they are our parents? None of us wanted to be born, damn it. That was their fucking choice. So why should I feel grateful for them being decent fucking human beings? I'm sorry, I digress. As I was saying in that moment, whilst I was grateful that she was accepting and apologizing for her not being the safe space for me to have told her my truth, and instead keep it hidden for so long, a voice at the back of my head kept thinking, but that isn't everything, Vilma. And that is the same voice that came to the forefront when I watched that scene with Shane and Yuna, because just like my mother didn't get it at the time, Yuna didn't either. And a part of me wish she had. I will continue to hold out hope that at some point queer media would acknowledge that it's not just about I wish I'd felt safe enough to come to you. It's also about I'm sorry for all the many ways in which I do not get to be this version of who you wanted me to. And to have the parent in that situation and that scenario acknowledge that hurt, that pain, that pressure, and how fucked up society is to expect that of us. And before you say, but Noria, we've heard of parents talking about them mourning the child that they would have had or they thought they would have had when their kids come out to them and they're dealing with how that changes things. I will like to point out that, sorry, that does not matter as much to me as being able to explore the emotional toll that forcing yourself to try and be what your culture and family expect of you, and you can't do that anymore. So you break away from that and are trying to communicate that to those you love so that fundamentally it can start a discussion, a conversation to hopefully change things for those down the line. Maybe some sixth cousin three times removed that you never get to meet, but who never has to deal with the burden of having to battle that thought in the first place. Because by having those uncomfortable conversations, you've set the ball rolling to make your extended family better as a result. And it starts with your parents. Like, I'm sorry, I come from a country, from a people where family is everything, and stepping out of line is a terrifying experience. And I wish it was more acknowledged. I think a lot of queer folks of color would agree with me on that as well, because let's be real. When queer kids come out to parents who are so quick with their acceptance, there's potential. There is the potential for those who are from the outside looking in to ask themselves, so why was it difficult for you to tell them? Why did it take you that long? Especially because they clearly aren't bigots and they accepted you as so easily. So you must have suspected that. Moments like that are why Shane's conversation with his mother is incredibly important. To see that it's not just about living your truth, but also about recognizing the hurt that is present in not being the person that your loved one subconsciously wanted you to be, and how much of a struggle it is to pretend to be otherwise. And that requires an apology as well. One just as valid as the apology for not being a safe space for your child to come to them with said truth in the first place. But of course, that is just me and my thoughts. Maybe I am yapping too much. Maybe I'm making zero sense as I'm currently stuffed full on jollof rice with fried plantain and roast chicken and cold malt, whichever the case may be. Whether you agree with me or not, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet and enjoyed anything I had to say. Share it so others can find my channel as well. Or you can check out my gaming or ASMR channels if they sound like something you might be interested in. I have them both linked in the description. I would say a happy almost new year to everybody watching. And until January 5th, because I am going back on my break, please remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.